A violent outburst from Raja Jackson, son of MMA legend Quinton Rampage Jackson, has spiraled into one of the darkest scandals the fight world has ever seen. What should have been a night of spectacle and stage theatrics turned into something far more chilling, a moment where entertainment crossed into raw, uncontrolled violence. The footage of Raja's brutal attack spread online within hours, leaving fans horrified, fighters furious, and the combat sports community divided. Yet, in all the noise, one voice rose above the rest. It wasn't a promoter, an analyst, or even his father. It was Nate Diaz. Known for his blunt honesty, Diaz didn't just call Raja's actions disgraceful. He called for something far more extreme, the death penalty. That one statement turned an already shocking scandal into a firestorm. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't just about Raja Jackson's violence. It was about whether Diaz himself had gone too far. But before Diaz's words set the internet ablaze, the world had to process what Raja had done. It began in a pro-wrestling-style ring, where Raja stepped in with Psycho Stu, a well-known name on the independent circuit. For fans in attendance, it seemed like just another show, flashy entrances, scripted spots, over-the-top personalities. But then the energy shifted. Midway through the performance, Raja lifted Stu high into the air and drove him headfirst into the canvas with sickening force. This wasn't a pulled move. This wasn't staged. This was as real as it gets. The crowd's cheers collapsed into stunned silence. Many assumed it was part of the show, until Raja did the unthinkable. He dropped to his knees and unleashed a storm of punches. Lefts, rights, hammer fists. Blow after blow landed on a man who was clearly unconscious. His arms dangled, his eyes rolled back, his body limp. And yet Raja kept going. The referee, unsure if it was part of the act, hesitated. That moment of hesitation proved damning. In combat sports, referees are trained to jump in the second a fighter can't defend themselves. In pro wrestling, performers protect one another, selling the violence without ever truly causing harm. But here, neither of those codes were followed. The ref froze, the crowd watched in horror, and Raja kept raining down punches on a man who wasn't moving. Phones came out immediately. Within hours, the clips had spread across TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, racking up millions of views. Fans weren't laughing. They weren't posting memes. They were calling it attempted murder. One user wrote, "I counted 22 punches after Stu was already out cold. That's not wrestling. That's not fighting. That's just a crime." Commentators echoed the outrage. Some said the footage looked less like combat, and more like a street mugging. Others pointed out the terrifying lack of empathy in Raja's expression. It wasn't the focused calm of a fighter. It was wild, uncontrolled, and fueled by ego. Even veteran fight fans, who'd seen some of the bloodiest wars in UFC history, admitted this moment made them uncomfortable. For many, Raja hadn't just crossed the line, he had obliterated it. The scandal exploded instantly. TMZ ran it. ESPN covered it. News anchors who barely knew the difference between MMA and WWE were suddenly talking about Raja Jackson. Within 24 hours, his name was trending worldwide, not because of his talent, but because of his violence. And the fallout was brutal. Ryan Garcia called it the worst thing I've seen in years. Derek Brunson said it proved Raja had no place in combat sports. Fans demanded lifetime bans. Even influencers outside the fight world piled on, mocking him for attacking a defenseless performer instead of stepping into a cage with real fighters. The referee, too, became a lightning rod for anger. Journalists slammed him for failing to act. "You don't need to be a doctor," one wrote. "You just need eyes." The man was out cold, and the ref stood there. But while the referee took heat, the bulk of the rage stayed locked on Raja. For Rampage Jackson's longtime fans, the disappointment cut deep. Rampage had always been larger than life, funny, wild, unpredictable. But he was still respected. He was still a professional. Raja's actions, however, felt like a betrayal of everything combat sports stood for. Rampage was crazy, sure. One fan tweeted, But he wasn't a thug. This was just thuggery. Rampage tried to defend his son. He went live, claiming Stu had provoked Raja earlier in the night by smashing a beer can over his head backstage. He insisted Raja wasn't a bad kid, just someone who had been pushed too far. But that defense crumbled almost instantly. Leaked footage showed Raja shaking Stu's hand minutes before the match, agreeing that they were cool, and that it was all part of the show. Even worse, a live stream from earlier that day surfaced where Raja bragged to his followers that he was planning to mess up a wrestler for real, and prove he wasn't living in his father's shadow. That live stream became the smoking gun. Suddenly, people weren't calling it an outburst, they were calling it premeditated. Legal analysts began weighing in on sports talk shows, explaining that premeditation could elevate the charges from assault to attempted manslaughter. Rumors spread about Stu's injuries, severe concussion, facial fractures, even a brief period of flatlining. Whether true or not, the rumors fed the fire. Law enforcement confirmed they were investigating. Raja was no longer just a trending topic, he was a potential criminal. Rampage scrambled to hire top-tier lawyers, but the tide was against them. Fans demanded punishment. Fighters demanded justice. Promoters distanced themselves. In less than a week, Rampage Jackson went from relative obscurity to one of the most despised names in combat sports. Then came the opinions of the stars. Conor McGregor blasted Raja on Twitter saying, "That wasn't fighting. That was rage without discipline. A fighter knows when to stop. Raja doesn't." His statement went viral, though many accused McGregor of hypocrisy, given his own violent history outside the cage. Still, his words carried weight. Other fighters chimed in. Bisping, Cormier, and countless veterans all condemned Raja. But then Nate Diaz spoke. And everything changed. During a fan Q&A, Diaz was asked for his thoughts. His response was chilling. "That kid don't deserve prison. He deserves the death sentence. Straight up. You don't beat an unconscious man like that and walk around free." The internet exploded. McGregor's words had been fiery, but Diaz's were nuclear. Clips of him saying, "death sentence," ricocheted across every platform, spawning hashtags, memes, and endless debates. Fans were divided. Some cheered Diaz for his brutal honesty, claiming he said what everyone else was afraid to. Others were horrified, calling his remarks reckless, dangerous, and over the line. To Diaz, though, the justification was simple. Raja had broken the most sacred unwritten rule in combat sports: protect your opponent when they can't protect themselves. Fighters bleed, they suffer, they push each other to the brink. But once it's over, respect takes over. Raja didn't stop. He didn't show respect. He kept attacking when there was nothing left to prove. To Diaz, that wasn't fighting, it was murder. And so, the scandal took on a new dimension. It wasn't just about Rampage Jackson's actions anymore. It was about Nate Diaz's words, and whether his call for execution was a reflection of the crime, or a reckless overstep from one of MMA's most unfiltered veterans. Some said Diaz went too far. Others said he hadn't gone far enough. But one thing was certain. The scandal had consumed not just Raja and his father, but the very soul of combat sports. The world wasn't just asking what would happen to Rampage Jackson. They were asking something bigger. Had Nate Diaz crossed his own line? Or had he simply said what no one else dared to admit?